How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Nun Zayin, Daf 157 of Masechta BavaBasra. Wow, that's less than 20 pages left to Masechta BavaBasra. Oh my, we are getting close. Okay, very interesting sugya today if you find it interesting. Yeah, shtikol BavaBasra. BavaBasra. Okay, here we go. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Daf Kuf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, about 5-10, more than 5, maybe 10 lines into the Amud. Says the Mishnah, Nofel abayis olav ve'al avivo olav ve'al morisha. Wow, there's a lot on this daf, a lot here. It's gewaldig. So if a house fell on Ruvain and his father Yaakov, alternatively, it fell on Ruvain or somebody who would bequeath to him, we're not really going to get into that today, the implications of that. It will come up on Daf Kuf Nun Tes. I'll try to say it briefly. The thing is, it's not super brief, but okay, starting with sort of the case that we will deal with more is if a house falls on Ruvain and his father Yaakov, unfortunately killing them. So the shaila is who died first, because if Yaakov died first, then Ruvain inherited Yaakov before he himself was killed. But if Ruvain died first, well, then he died first. He never inherited Yaakov, and when Yaakov dies, his heirs inherit him entirely. And as we're going to see, the nafkamin is what if Ruvain owed some money, etc. What's the scenario of Morishav? Again, I'm just going to explain it kind of quickly to be yotzes on, but it's not really going to be super important for today. It will come up in another 2 days. Morishav is, let's say Yaakov was already dead before this incident. Yaakov had already passed away. And then the house fell down on Ruvain and his uncle Esav. Esav is not an evil guy in this scenario. He's just Yaakov's brother. So if the house fell down on Ruvain and on Esav, so again, the shaila is who died first. Because if Esav has another brother or two, let's say another 2 brothers, so if Esav died first, well then Ruvain would quickly inherit Esav, because Esav's brother was Yaakov, whose son is, meaning it's Reuven's father. So through Yaakov, Reuven would get the share that would be shaykh to Yaakov from Esav. So it depends. If Esav died first, then Reuven would get part of the inheritance. If Reuven died first, well then just Esav died, and Yaakov was already dead. So then let's say 2 other brothers would simply split the inheritance in half. And again, there's an afkamina if Reuven had owed money. If Reuven actually inherits first, well then the creditors can make a claim on the money. So on the inheritance that Reuven inherited from either his father or his uncle right before he died. Okay, fine. We get the situation with Esav is a little bit more complicated. We don't need to really get into it today. We could focus more on the scenario of Reuven and his father Yaakov were in a house. Tragically, the house collapsed, killing both of them. And the shaila is who died first. So, from the beginning, Nafal abayis olav al aviv. If a house collapsed and tragically killed Reuven and his father Yaakov, or olav al Morishav, or Reuven and his uncle Esav, vayisa olav ksubas. Now Reuven was married, and he had a wife who now needs to receive her ksuba payment. Uvalchov, or if Reuven had borrowed money, and there's a creditor who needs to get paid back, and Reuven is absolutely broke. There's no money to pay for the ksuba, there's no money to pay for the balchov. Yosha av omim haben meisrishin. So now the heirs of Yaakov are arguing that Reuven died first, and therefore, since he's the first one who died, he never had an opportunity to inherit Yaakov. And therefore, the creditors have no claim because Reuven died broke and he never inherited his father before his death. So the creditors are stuck. Whereas the creditors, of course, are arguing, no, it's the other way around. Yaakov died first. Reuven quickly inherited Yaakov before himself dying. We now have a claim on Reuven's estate, that he inherited from Yaakov, and we can get paid back. So right, so Yoshia Avomim, Yoshia Avomim, so the father's heirs say Haben Meis Rishon, that Reuven died first, and therefore Reuven never had any access, I guess, to the estate. And then Yaakov died. However, the creditors argue Ha'av Meis Rishon, that the father died, and therefore Reuven did did inherit Yaakov. And therefore V'achakach Meis Haben, and only then did Reuven die, and therefore the creditors are claiming to be able to collect their debt. Beis Shammai Om Yachloku. So Beis Shammai says, look, I guess the claim of the creditor is right. They split it because we don't know. We don't know who died first. Maybe Yaakov died first, in which case the creditor has a claim. Maybe Reuven died first, in which the creditor has no claim. So we don't know. So they split it. He collects half of it. Beis Hillel says no. The heirs of the father definitely stand to inherit right now. The creditor maybe is able to collect his debt, depending on if Reuven died first or second. So therefore, his possible claim is weaker than their definite claim, and therefore they keep the entire estate, according to Beis Hillel. Okay. Wow. Okay, that was the whole thing. Now, says the Gemara. It's a Gevaldige Gemara. Tanan Osum. We learned over there. I think it's going to be later on Daf Kuf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph. Let's see. Probably. It's probably there. Let's see. That's the second to last Daf of Masechta BavaBasra. Kuf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph. Hamavas Chaver B'Shtar Govin. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay. So it's a Mishnah Daf Kuf Ayin Hey. So Tanan Osum, we learn over there in Perek Get Poshit. Hamalves Chavero Bishtar. So if Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and there's a document, right? Shimon has a document that says so. That says that he can collect $1,000 from Reuven. So go from the Chosam Mishpatim. Shimon, right? If Reuven defaults, if Reuven's broke, he doesn't have the money to pay back Shimon. So Shimon can collect from properties that Reuven may have sold to Levi. Right, so if there's a document, Shimon can claim can collect even from properties that Reuven sold. However, if there's no document, there are simply witnesses, it's a milva al peh, well then Shimon can only collect either from Reuven's money, but if there's no money, then he can only collect from Reuven's property that he currently has. If it's a milva al peh, if there is no document, Shimon would be unable to collect from properties that Reuven sold to Levi, let's say. By Shmuel, now Shmuel asks a question, and this question is going to be the focus of our attention, or much of it, for the rest of the daf. Shmuel asks, the ikne v'kona mahu. Interesting. What if, and you might recognize this lashon from being at a chasana, I believe in the Ksuba they have this lashon, right? That which I already own and that which I will own in the future. If Shimon lends Reuven $1,000 and Reuven says, I'm being mishabed any properties that I currently own and even any properties that I will own in the future that I will buy. Okay? So the question is, those future properties, are they mishubed to the loan? So if Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and Reuven says, my current properties and any future properties are meshubah to the loan, and then he buys a new property and he sells that property to Levi. Can Shimon collect that property from Levi? Of course, assuming that he also sold all of his other properties, because we don't collect from nechasim mishubadim when there's nechasim richorim available. Anyways, the shaila is specifically regarding any properties that Reuven purchases subsequently. And then sells them. Can Shimon collect from those as well? So that's the question of Shmuel. Where's Shmuel? Where are we? Boy Shmuel. I'm reading that again. It says Shmuel. The ikni v'kono mau. So if Reuven says it says that any properties that I will purchase are meshubah to the loan, and he then subsequently did purchase property and he sold them, can Shimon collect from them? Ali, but Reb Meir. So now, of course, according to Reb Meir, that a person can be makne, and in this case be mishabed davar shelo bala olam, that which he doesn't yet has, that which isn't yet a reality, and in this case, Reuven doesn't yet own these properties. Says Reb Meir, you would still be able to make a kinyan on them, or in this case, a shibud on them. Lo tibaylach tevadai kana. So certainly, sure, Shimon would be able to collect from those properties, right? That Reuven, at the time that he wrote the document, was mishabed any future properties. Okay, the meshubed, fine. Ki tibaylach. The question is aliba d'Rabbanan. According to the rabbis, the Amrei ein odam makne davar shelo bala olam. The rabbis, however, say a person cannot make a kinyan on something that does not, or be makne, something that does not yet exist, and Reuven does not yet own these properties. So the shaila is, if he says that any properties that I buy are meshubah to the loan, are they in fact meshubah to the loan? Can you do that? Rav Yosef Tashma says, Rav Yosef, come in here. This is an interesting scenario. Who can tell me what this is talking about? This is talking about a scenario where Shimon lends Reuven $1,000. Okay, so Reuven owes Shimon $1,000. Shimon then sells Reuven one of his properties, let's say for $1,000. Okay. So again, Shimon lent Reuven $1,000, which he hasn't yet been paid back. What's it called when you pay somebody back? Reimbursed for whatever. The loan has not yet been paid back. Shimon, while the loan has not yet been paid back, Shimon then sells Reuven a property for $1,000. Shimon sells Reuven a property for $1,000. Shimon sells Reuven a property for $1,000. So now the shaila is, when Shimon comes to collect the loan, and he comes to Reuven with the document that says, Reuven, you owe me $1,000. So the Rashbam kind of fills in all this information. So Admon, which is, this isn't in the Gemara, but Admon says that Reuven can basically make the claim and say, one second, I have a document, right? Reuven pulls out his document that says that Shimon sold him a field, and he says, the fact that you sold me a field, why would you sell me a field when I owe you money? The fact that I have a document saying that you subsequently sold me a field, clearly the loan had been settled before then. However, the Chachamim, and this isn't our Gemara, the Chachamim say, no, fakir. Shimon, Chacham Einav B'Rosha, Shimon was a smart guy. He taka realized that, look, I'm owed $1,000. And in order to make sure that I'm going to be able to get reimbursed, I'm now going to sell Reuven a property for $1,000, so that if he defaults on the loan, I know that I have property valued at $1,000 that I can take as a collateral until I am paid back. So Chacham say Davka Shimon was very smart in doing what he did. So back in the Gemara, I'm reading this again. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef Tashma, come here. The Chachamim say Zehaya Pikeach, Shimon was a very smart guy. That after loaning Reuven $1,000, he then sold Reuven a property for $1,000. Because now, when it's time to be paid back, it's time for the loan to be paid back, he's guaranteed that, meaning he knows that if Reuven doesn't pay him back, he can just take the property as a collateral. So we see that this subsequent purchase of this property is meshubah to the loan, right? Shimon lent Reuven $1,000. Okay, Shimon then sold Reuven a property, and we're saying that the property is meshubah to the loan, even though it was purchased subsequently. Amalei Rava, but Rava says to Rav Yosef, Minei ka'amart. But one second, that's not the case that we're talking about, though. You're telling me that Shimon can collect directly from Reuven. Sure, that's all fine and good. When we're talking about collecting from Reuven himself, you can even collect the shirt off his back. But our question is not when Reuven still has the property that he bought subsequently, but when Reuven then sells it to Levi, can Shimon collect it from Levi? That's what we're interested in. That's what we want to know. If Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and Reuven says, Reuven says that any properties that I have and any future properties of mine are meshubed to the loan. Reuven then subsequently buys a property and sells it to Levi. So Reuven doesn't currently have it. Levi has it. Levi bought it from Reuven. Can Shimon collect from Levi? That's what we want to know. Rav Yosef, if you're bringing an example where Shimon lent Reuven $1,000, then sold him a property, and Reuven still has it. That's not that's not what we want to know. We want to know what happens if Reuven then sells it. Can Shimon collect from Levi, who now owns it? Again, what we want to know is the ikne kana u'macher. That if he says the ikne, whatever I will buy, kana, he then did buy, u'macher, and then he sold it to Levi. The ikne kana v'horish, or he says whatever I will buy, he then did buy, he then died, and his children inherited it. Can Shimon collect from the Yisomim? What do we say there? Wow. This is like Bava Metzia. You got, it's like, you got to get your koiches into it. You get the whole, you kol kuli, kol kulcha. Hopefully our brain won't turn to mush. I don't think it's a mushy kind of daf, but, it's a gewaldige daf. Shmak. So what do we say there? Omer Rav Chana says, Rav Chana Toshma. Well, what about our Mishnah? What did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said that if you have a father and son who were tragically killed in a collapsed house, okay, Reuven and Yaakov both died, and we said that Reuven is broke, and he had borrowed $1,000 from Shimon, a Balchov. Shimon is making the claim that Yaakov died first, and therefore Reuven inherited his father Yaakov. Reuven then died, right? Because they both died in the collapsed house. Reuven then died, and his children, the Yisomim, are going to inherit from Reuven. So Yaakov died. Reuven inherited Yaakov. Reuven died. His heirs, his orphans, his Yisomim, his children inherited Reuven. Shimon is now saying, right? Shimon's arguing Yaakov died. Reuven inherited Yaakov, and therefore we can collect from the Yisomim. So we see a scenario of where Shimon lent Reuven $1,000. Subsequently, Reuven got property, in this case by inheriting through his father. He then died and bequeathed it to his children. And Shimon's whole argument is that Yaakov died first, Reuven inherited him, bequeathed it to his children, and I can therefore collect from his children. So we see that property that was acquired subsequently and then either sold or in this case bequeathed, a Balchov would be able to collect from either the Lekuchis or the Yisomim. Wow. Tashma Kamnir, so I just explained it outside, let's read it inside. Tashma Kamnir, Nofal Abayis Olav Alovid. If a house collapsed on Reuven and his father Yaakov, Olav Valmorishav or Reuven and Esav, V'hoiso Olav Ksubasisho Valchov, and Reuven has a wife, and he has to pay ksuba to his wife, or he owed money to Shimon, and Reuven is broke. Yosha'ab Omrim, Yaakov's heirs argue, Haben Meis Rishon, that Reuven died first and never inherited Yaakov, V'achakach Meisa'av, and only then did Yaakov die. Yaakov died second. Uvalichovis Omrim, but Shimon, the creditor, is arguing, Ha'av Meis Rishon Chule, that Yaakov died first and Reuven inherited Yaakov, and therefore we have a claim from the Yisomim. If it answers your mind, that when he says that whatever I will acquire, and then he did acquire, and then he either sold or bequeathed, lo mishtabit, that the property is not meshubit to Shimon, to the loan. Well, then what's the point? Even if Yaakov dies first, and Reuven inherits Yaakov, and Reuven then dies and bequeaths to his children, the iknehu. This is property that Reuven acquired subsequent to the loan. And if you say that such properties Shimon cannot collect from the lekuchis or from the heirs, well then what's the point of the Mishnah? Rather, the implication of the Mishnah is that Shimon can make the claim if Reuven inherited Yaakov, and therefore, even though it is property that Reuven acquired subsequent to the loan and then bequeathed to his children, Shimon can still make a claim on them, can still collect from them. There you have it. Amlu Rav Nachman, but Rav Nachman says, Zeira Chavin Tirgama, that Zeira, our friend, explained that no, you could say that Me'ikra Din Shimon cannot collect from such properties, but mitzvah al yisomim lifra chovas aviyin, but simply it is a mitzvah on the yisomim to pay back the debt of their father. Meaning, you can argue that in a scenario where Reuven subsequently buys property and sells it to Levi, Shimon cannot collect from Levi, but this is a different case because we're talking about where he bequeaths it to his children and he owes money to Reuven owes money to Shimon. It's a mitzvah on the heirs to settle the debts of their father, and that is why we're saying that Shimon can claim from the Yisomim, but not Me'ikra Din, but because of this subsequent thing that's specific to Yisomim that they collect from their, that they want to settle the debts of their father. What's all that noise? It just sounds like there's a lot of people outside. Okay, Gewaldig. Maskif la Rav Ashi. But if that's the case, Rav Ashi has a kasha milva al pei. The thing is that if we're saying that Me'ikra Din Shimon is unable to collect from these properties, but only out of the fact that it's a mitzvah for the Yisomim to settle the debts of their father. But okay, so that should be no different than a milva al peh. It's not like there's a document and therefore Me'ikra Din Shimon can collect it. No, we're saying for a separate reason it's good that the Yisomim should settle the debts of their father. But if that's the case, then it should have no more strength to it, no more seriousness to it, koach to it, than a milva al peh. Rav Shmuel Damitavar, both Rav and Shmuel say milva al peh eino go v'lo min hayoshev v'lo min halekuchis. That a milva al peh you would not collect from Yorshin, right? A verbal, an oral, a non-documented loan would be unable to be collected from purchasers or from heirs. So then why are we saying that Shimon can collect it? Ella ha money Rav he. Rather, it must be that the Mishnah is specifically Reb Meir, who says that a person can be makne adavar shelo ba'le'olam, and that is why he would be able to collect. Okay, therefore it must be that it's Reb Meir, the author of our Mishnah is Reb Meir, who says that adavar makne adavar shelo ba'le'olam, and therefore that is why Shimon can collect from the heirs. However, we have no indication that according to the Rabbanon, in a scenario where Reuven subsequently purchases a property and then sells it, we have no indication that the rabbis would say that Shimon would be able to collect from the lekuchas. Rav Meir says yes, because the question that we asked was, what about the rabbis who say ein adam davar makne davar shelo ba'le'olam, and we couldn't prove that. We couldn't prove that they would say that Shimon can collect from the kuchas. Omer of Yaakov min Pokut says of Yaakov min Pokut mishmei de Ravina. Toshma come near. Shtarei chov amukdamin psulin v'amuchorin ksherin. Cheved, this is straight up of Metzia. Shnaim oichsim betalis. Oh, geschmack. If you have a shtar chov, so Shimon lends Reuven $1,000. Shimon lends Reuven $1,000 above Metzia. Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and so they write it right. So Reuven writes Shimon a document. So if I think it was Kosev Benisan v'Lolava ad Tishrei. Was it Kosev Benisan v'Lolava ad Tishrei? Was that the lashon in the Gemara there? I can't remember. But anyways, if Reuven writes a document to Shimon that says that the loan took place in Nisan, but the fact of the matter is, the loan really only took place in Tishrei. Shimon only gave the money and lent the money to Reuven in Tishrei, 6 months later. That's a problem. It's a problem that the document says that the loan took place in Nisan, because Shimon now has this document that says Nisan, and he, when he's collecting the loan, if Reuven defaults, he's going to go to anybody who purchased property from Reuven, subsequent to Nisan, when apparently the document was written. And if somebody purchased a property from Reuven in Iyar the next month, Shimon's going to come up with his document, and he's going to say, look, you purchased it after the date on this document. It's mine. I can collect from it. But the fact of the matter is, Shimon never actually loaned Reuven any money until 5 months after that, until Tishrei. So that's a problem, because Shimon is going to take this document, or can take this document, and collect from Lekuchis improperly. However, if it's the other way around, if the loan took place in Nisan, Shimon lent money to Reuven in Nisan, but the document only says a date that's 6 months later in Tishrei, that would be okay. Because worse comes to worse, what's going to happen? Shimon can only collect from property. Oh my gosh, there's like some lighting thing that's driving me. That's bothering me. Worse comes to worse. What's the problem? Basically, Shimon can now only collect from properties that Reuven sold subsequent to Tishrei. Okay, so Shimon had lent Reuven $1,000 6 months prior in Nisan, but he can only collect from properties that were sold subsequent to Tishrei 6 months later. The thing is, what if Reuven purchased property? Remember, the loan took place in Nisan. What if Reuven purchased property in Iyar and then sold it in Cheshvan, a month? Right. The document says Tishrei. He sold it in Cheshvan. Now, the property was purchased prior to the date in the document, Tishrei. Right? It was purchased. I just said in Iyar, right? 5 months prior to the date in the document. So on the one hand, based on the document, Shimon is going to collect that from Levi, who purchased this property in Cheshvan, a month after the date in the document. But the fact of the matter is that field was only purchased by Reuven a month after the loan took place, right? And the loan actually took place in Nisan. Reuven bought the property in Iyar, then sold the property to Levi in Cheshvan, a month after the date written in the document. And we're saying that that's okay, that there's no problem with that document. What about the fact that Shimon is now going to go and collect from Levi, who purchased the property in Cheshvan, a month after the date in the document? And even though the property was only purchased by Reuven a month after the actual loan took place, a month after Nisan. So apparently, from the fact that we say that it's kosher, there seems to be no concern with the fact that Shimon is going to collect from a property that Reuven purchased after the loan happened. Well, I hope I was clear enough. Also, because the light was like bouncing off my phone or something and distracting me. I hope I was still able to explain it decent enough. So again, Tashma, come in here. A document recording a loan that says that where the date is earlier than the actual loan happened, that is possible. That is a problem, because Shimon is going to collect from property that wasn't actually meshubed to the actual loan, right? That was sold before the actual loan took place. But if the date on the document is later than the actual loan, ksherin, that is okay. What about the fact that since there's a later date, then Shimon might end up collecting from property that was purchased after the actual loan 6 months prior, but the date in the document is 6 months later? So that any subsequent property that was purchased and then sold or bequeathed, lo mishtabed, is not meshubah to the loan, well then muchar and ma'akshirin, then why is the shtar mu'achar kosher? Di'iknehu. He's going to collect he could potentially collect then from properties that were sold subsequent to the actual loan, but prior to the date recorded in the document. Hamani Rameri the Amar or the Makna Davar Shel Bal Olam, we could say, well, that is right. The Mandam who says that shtar mu'achar is kosher is Dafka Reb Meir who says Adam Makna Davar Shelo Bal Olam. Amar Misharsha Mishmei Derava Tashma Kavanir Lishvach Karkos Keitzad. So the Mishnah Gittin says that Shvach Karkos can only be collected from Nechasim B'nei Chorin, from property that Reuven has. What does that mean? Keitzad, what are we talking about? Reuven sells a property to Levi. And Levi buys the property and he invests in it, he plows it, he fertilizes it, he makes the property better, plants it. And Reuven made the property better. So if before it was worth $1,000, now it's worth $1,500. Uva Balchov Vitarfa. However, one day Shimon shows up at Levi's door and he says, Levi, I had loaned Reuven $1,000. He defaulted. I'm now collecting this field that has a lien on it from my loan. Okay, so Levi says, okay, malasot, he gives Shimon the property, everything. The property, the improvement to the property, everything now goes to Shimon. So now Reuven needs to get his money back. He needs to get back $1,500 from, I don't know what you said. Levi gives the property, everything to Shimon. Levi now needs to get his money back. So he goes to Reuven. Now, he's entitled to get all $1,500 back. The thing is, not all of those $1,500 were created equal. There's the $1,000 that he paid for the field, and then there's the $500 of improvement to the field. So when Levi comes to collect from Reuven, so the $1,000, the amount that he paid for the field, right? Since he had a achrayus on the field, Reuven guaranteed the field. So the principal, the amount that he paid, the $1,000, Levi can collect from Nechas Mishubadim. So if Reuven had another field that he sold to Yehuda, Levi can knock on Yehuda's field and collect it from him. And the increased value that Levi increased to the field, well, that Minuchasim b'nei Chorin, Levi can only collect from property that Reuven currently has, not anything that he sold. Now, here's the thing. We said that Shimon collected Levi's entire field, the base amount plus all the improvement. Now, the improvement didn't exist at the time of the loan. When Shimon lent Reuven $1,000, Reuven had this property. Levi didn't yet own it. Levi didn't yet improve it. The improvement that Levi brought to the field was subsequent to the loan, and we're saying that Shimon is collecting the entire field, principal and shvach, even though the shvach only came subsequent to the loan. And if you're going to say that subsequent properties that were sold or bequeathed are not mishubad, why can Shimon collect the increased value? That's subsequent. Hamani, who is this? Reb Meir, it's Reb Meir the Amar the Makna Davar Shel Bal Olam, that Reuven could even be makne, something that does not yet exist, i.e. could even be mishabed, the not yet existent improvement that Levi will in the future bring to the property. Says the Gemara, Imtim Tzaloma de Ikne Kana Umacher Dikne Kana Varish Lo Mishtabed Alo Mishtabed. Okay. So if you say that any future property that is sold or bequeathed is not mishubad, okay, so it's not mishubad to the loan. Imtim Tzalomar Mishtabed, if you say that it is mishubad to the loan, well then, lava v'lava v'chaz v'konamau. What if what if Shimon lent Reuven $1,000, and Reuven says, all my property and any subsequent properties are mishubad to the loan, and then somebody else also lends Reuven $1,000, and Reuven says the same thing to him too. So the kam mishtabed, levas mishtabed. So So the subsequent property that is bought and sold, is it meshubah to the first loan that Reuven received, or to the first creditor, or to the second creditor? Rav Nachman says, we asked this same question. They sent to us from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Rishon Kana, that the first creditor is Kona, and it's meshubah to the first debt. Rav Huna Amar Yachloku, whereas Rav Huna says they split it between the two creditors. V'chein Tani Rabbi Barvua Yachloku. Rabbi Barvua also says that they split it. Amar Ravina says, Ravina Madura Kama Deravashi. Amlan Rishon Kana, Madura Basra Deravashi, Amlan Yachloku Vilchsa Yachloku. Wow. Who can tell me what the Madura Kama Deravashi and Madura Basra Deravashi is? The Rashbam explains, very interesting, that basically Rav Ashi over the course of 30 years would review all of his learning. Over the course of 30 years he would review all of his learning. So Ravina says that the first time Ravina says the first time Rav Ashi went through all of his learning, he paskined that the subsequent property would be meshubah to the first creditor. However, Madura Basra Duravashi, when he went over all of his learning a second time, Omerlan, he said Yachloku, that the two creditors will split it. Vehilchas and the lacha is Yachloku, that they divide it. Meisvei, we have a kasha, however. The Shvach Karkos Ketzad, we're quoting the earlier brisa, that when it comes to improvement to the property, right? Levi purchased the property from Reuven, and then he improved it, and we're saying that when he collects it, right, and Shimon takes it away from him, then Levi goes to collect it from Reuven, so the Shvach can only be collected from Nechasim b'nei Chorin. So Rishamachar Sadel Chaveru, Reuven sells a property to Levi, Ve'eshbicha, and Levi then improves it, Uvabalcho v'tarfa, and then Shimon comes and takes the property away from Levi, right? The principal, the base property plus the improvement. Kishu Gove, when Levi then goes to Reuven to collect, Gove as Akarin min Nechasim Mishubadim, so he can collect his $1,000 principal that he paid for the property from any property that Reuven may have sold to Yehuda. Ves Hashevach, but the increased value min Nechasim b'nei Chorin, he's collecting from only from Nechasim b'nei Chorin, from Reuven's property that he currently has. Now, v'im isa chatzi shevach mibayile. Now here's the question: if what we just said is that when you have two creditors, they split it between them, well, there's two creditors in this scenario, Levi and Shimon, right? Reuven borrowed $1,000 from Shimon, and he said that my property and any subsequent property are meshubah to the loan. Okay, so Shimon is lova number one. Reuven then sold property that he purchased subsequently. He then sold to Levi and said to Levi, if anything happens, you come back to me, right? I'm guaranteeing it. So now Levi also has claims against Reuven. So Levi is like a second creditor, right? That if anything happens to the field, Levi can then claim it from Reuven. And sure enough, there was I don't know this wasn't, sorry, I accidentally said that Reuven sold to Levi something that he purchased subsequently. No, he didn't necessarily purchase subsequently. The subsequent stuff is the shvach, right? So on the shvach, there's basically two creditors, right? There's Levi, there's Shimon, who is the original creditor, but also Levi, because Reuven is going to guarantee the field, and this subsequent shvach, Levi now also has a right to be guaranteed and claim from Reuven. So basically, Shimon and Levi both have claims against Reuven, so they're two creditors, they should have to split it. Why did we say that Shimon can collect the whole field and all the shvach from Levi? So my gova nami de katani chatzi shvach. Well, when it says that Shimon can collect the shvach from Levi, it means only half of it. Wow. That was Daf Kuf Nezayin, Masechta BavaBasra. That was some daf. Wow. Okay. So we talked about the scenario where a house collapses tragically on Reuven and his father, or Reuven and his uncle. And then, this question is who died first, who died second, what if Reuven has a creditor? And then we talked about this concept of property, right? If Reuven says any property that I have and any property that I will have are meshubah to the loan, right? So then what happens if he subsequently buys property and sells it to somebody else? Is it meshubah? We said, of course, according to Reb Meir, of course it is. According to the Rabbanan, however, I don't know that we necessarily proved it. It doesn't seem like we're able to prove that according to the Rabbanan they would say that the subsequent property would be meshubad. Peace out.